but it's learning, right? So if
It
you,
is
you
learning.
teach children to hit a nail in the wood, they have to hit their thumb at some point to make sure that they learn from that how it should work. And that I think, and people say that, right? We should have an environment where you're allowed to fail, but you should learn to learn from it. I think that's a far more important lesson. That
Yeah.
those learnings is what you're looking for.
Welcome to Innovation Talks. Join us weekly as we discuss with distinguished industry guests how to refine and improve corporate innovation and new product development as businesses aim for long-term success. Hosted by Paul Heller, Sophion CTO.
If you're looking for additional information around new product development or corporate innovation, sign up for Sophion's newsletter where we share news and industry best practices monthly. The fastest way to do this is to go to sophion.com, that's SOPHEON.com, and click the sign up and stay informed box. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Glad you could join us. Hope you're all having a good summer. I have a nice guest today. Esther Gons, and hopefully I said that correctly, is with us, and she is the founder and CEO of a company called GroundControl based in the Netherlands, and she's written two very interesting books that are very, I think, relevant to our entire audience here, a different slant on innovation. First one is about business models and corporate startup teams, and if you're an established corporation, how do you do that? How do you become lean again and get into the startup world? And the second one, which I'm really interested in, it's a topic that should be very interesting to all of us, is about innovation accounting. And what I liked about both of these books is the word ecosystem is in there, and that'll be fun to explore. Esther, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. It's an honor to be here. And kudos on pronouncing my name right. I know that the Dutch is a difficult sound for most people, or sounding angry to most people. So kudos to you.
And where are you joining us from, Esther?
I'm based in Aalsmeer. I'm joining you from Aalsmeer, which is where my home is at. My offices are in Amsterdam, but that's only 15 kilometers away from my home. And it's sort of a suburb to Amsterdam, really.
Right. And how's your summer going?
My summer is a typical Dutch summer, which means it's 14 degrees and raining every now and then. But that's not too different from the winters in the Netherlands, which are basically the same.
Yeah. Are you guys still offices closed, open? Where are you guys at with that?
Officially, it's work from home as much as possible.
Yeah.
But we are allowed to return to the office. But we have adopted a hybrid model a long time ago, working asynchronously with our team. So whenever people feel like they should be in the office to be more productive, or the other way around, it's up to them. Our communication is within the cloud.
Okay, good. So you were kind of ready for work at home when it hit everybody else. You may have been in front of it a little bit, huh? Good for you.
A little bit, yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, I was going to ask you about how you got involved in innovation, but I thought I'd first ask you, when you hear that word innovation, what does that mean to you? How would you define innovation? Because I know you've thought about that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's actually a good question, Paul, and I love that you ask it. It's actually how I start most of my master classes and presentations that I do for bigger corporates when I do strategy sessions. It's exactly that question, right? So what do you mean by innovation?
Yeah.
Because it's such a loaded word, and there's so many things that you can catch in them, and it's okay to think about that within your company. It's also okay if you mean different things by it, but I think that you should sort of really, really think through that you differentiate from what you mean, and don't use the word for everything in your company. And I know there's different ways to look at it. You can slice it vertically, you can slice it horizontally. There's different ways to look at innovation,
Yeah,
right? There's people that say, well, we want to get to the origin of innovation. How do you come up with new innovation? We want to look at the horizons, the time horizons, or the growth models. There's different ways of looking at it. But it's important to understand what you mean by innovation when you're addressing other people, but also that everyone else understand what you are talking about. Is it process innovation? Are you trying to do completely new things? And the way I look at it is that I slice it usually in the way that you should manage innovation. So that's my sort of a
Yeah.
passion, right? So I don't mind if you call all things innovation, but make sure that whenever you want to manage innovation, there's two types. And those two types have the need of two different systems. And if you want to make sure that it happens within your organization, that you need to set up those two systems. And other people talk about those systems as I don't know, maybe ambidextrous organizations, right? The two different
Mm-hmm.
systems, or the two different management styles that you need for the types of innovation. But for me, that's the biggest differentiator within innovation, that everybody understands that there is the innovation that you need for your core, your processes, your incremental innovations, your current product features, and the renewal of that. But there's also the innovation that helps you discover new growth models, new business models,
Mm-hmm.
and new maybe risky markets with new technology, and those two things need two different management styles.
Yeah, that's very well said. And then the word ecosystem, where does that fit into this?
Well, basically, that's combining those two systems
Yeah.
in your company, right? So people hear the word ecosystem, and then they associate it with all kinds of things, like the people in your company and everybody aligned with things. But to me, it's those two systems that work well together. It's saying that your core company and the goals within your core company, that they're still sort of aligned towards the second system of finding new models and more of a disruptive innovation. It's instead of putting your startup labs or your innovation hubs or whatever outside of your company, you need to connect the two to make sure that you make use of the most resources and time, and so that it can actually scale bigger. One of the biggest advantages of having a corporate is that you have the ability to scale it far bigger and grow it bigger and faster than a startup on its
Yeah.
own could do. So that ecosystem to me is bringing those two systems together and make of the most of these two.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. That's, I know, a very prevalent theme in your writings. How did you get involved in this, Esther? Huh? Innovation and the management of innovation.
Well, yeah, that's a funny story actually, because I think that in my years of entrepreneurial or my entrepreneurial journey, because I've been an entrepreneur all of my life. I've started out as a freelancer, and then I started new businesses. Been an entrepreneur all of my life, and I think that journey started out by trying to stay away from corporates, but just pioneering, finding new ways to do things and work out things. And I think it started with one of the biggest failures that I did coming out of college. I was actually asked to build something new for a big computer company. I'm not going to mention the name right now, but they asked me to build something completely new because I wanted to have a new way of selling their products, like a computer products. This was at the end of the century, right? When when we didn't know about things like blog posts or
Right.
um, personal logins and new
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so I got a lot of money for me coming out of college. And I was partnered with a development agency, and we came up with this brilliant idea of building a platform for people working from home.
You were really so ahead of everything.
Exactly. And we asked people to write columns. So those were called columns because we didn't know the blog post didn't exist yet. To write about how loyal people would be working from home, what kind of environment people would need, and instead of just putting products of that computer company there, we would also put products of other companies. Like, what would you
Hmm.
need if you have a home office to have a
Yeah.
chair or a table, stuff like that. And I looked for startups that weren't called startups at that point, but I looked for widget, right? So is there a traffic information real time, which was hard to find at that point. So It took me a long time to find all of the things that I wanted. I think we were building like 2 years on this. You can imagine 2 years and a lot of money spent. And then we had this huge, big launch with another media partner. And it was an enormous launch and it had cost a lot of money. And then the most amazing thing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And there's nothing really going on, and I think people didn't understand, and then managers didn't understand at all. And the people at the company at that point were fusing with another computer company. And the new people in the new roles, they didn't understand what was happening, and they didn't see any sales at all. So they just pulled the plug after half a year or
Yeah,
something. We didn't
yeah,
even have the chance to iterate on anything. So there was a lot of waste, basically, of time and effort, and a brilliant idea that turned out
yeah,
to be 20 years too early.
yeah. I mean, somebody else had that idea later on and made a fortune at it, right?
Probably. But that sort of pushed me towards, this is ridiculous. This is something that is completely new. Nobody even tried. Why did we do it that way, right? Is
Yeah,
there another way to sort of come up with or try and find out how that should have worked or how that could have worked? And then when Steve Blank wrote or started writing about his ideas about to do lean startup and de-risking business models by trying and giving it to the people earlier to try and see what works. So validated learning, that sort of made so much sense to me that I
yeah.
jumped to it and started to work with other entrepreneurs in the Netherlands to bring it to the Netherlands and develop it and iterate on it and bring it further. And that is basically, yeah, I think my onset towards innovation. I was already in the tech scene. My background is in tech. So I've always worked with beginning companies, my own companies. And from that point on, I also started helping other startups, volunteering for big accelerators, so investing in startups. So that is my passion, basically, getting this innovation to work. So, yeah,
Startups are in your blood. I could just tell the way you're talking. That's there's a real passion there for trying something new, creating something different.
right, right.
I'm glad you weren't discouraged by that. Well, failure is maybe a bad word for it, but then nothing happened, right?
Right, but it's learning, right? So if
It
you
is learning.
teach children to hit a nail in the wood, they have
Yeah,
to hit their thumb at some point to make sure that they learn from that how it should work. And that I think and people say that, right? We should have an environment where you're allowed to fail, but you should learn from it. I think that's a far more important lesson. That
yeah,
those learnings is what you're looking for.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think we all really forget the value of afterwards, step back, take some time and say, what did we learn? We all say, well, why did it fail? Right? That's a common question. Why did it fail? But what did we learn is a step that a lot of people unfortunately don't take. So, well, how did you get from there to accounting? I mean, the whole innovation accounting is a great subject. You know, I've had discussions with all sorts of people, and people say, don't do it, do it, don't make it too rigorous. I work for a public company, and our software development has to be capitalized, right? So we have that aspect to it, but that's very different, I think, than general accounting in innovation. If you're another type of product company, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, so for most people, accounting is this financial way of looking at things, right? And I've also been approached by a lot of accountants that saying, "Hey, you're doing innovation in accountancy." Well, that's not really what innovation accounting is
Mm,
about. So
right.
innovation accounting is a word that is first coined by Eric Ries, where he was referring to innovation accounting as what a team in a startup needs to be accountable for their decisions. So you don't want to do everything on gut feeling, right? So you want to have data-driven learning, because if you're doing those experiments and do validated learning within a team, you have to make a decision on those learnings. So if you've asked a lot of people what they're doing right now, you want to convert that into a learning by using the metrics within that learning. So if I don't know, 15 out of the 20 people that you interviewed said something specifically, then that is something that you can use as a learning, because that is evidence that is there. So you want to have some sort of accountability up front to make the decisions from. And is what Eric Ries meant by innovation accounting in his book, Lean Startup. So once I was pulled in a corporate life by a lot of corporates that said, "Hey, Esther, you have built this framework, you're doing something right, and you have a successful way of looking at how to do startup investing or venture building or whatever you want to call it." It was easy for me to see the difference between that startup ecosystem or VC investment from the outside compared to what happened in corporates. So when you put this into a corporate environment, that means that you need to have more layers towards that innovation accounting, because if you want to be successful, just leaving those teams that are doing innovation and come up with ideas with a lot of money and not looking at it is not a very successful way of investing in innovation. Right? A lot of people saying, so don't give them any rules, don't give them any metrics, don't be too rigorous indeed, like you're saying. But that doesn't make sense either. If you look at it from an investment perspective, like I've been an angel investor as well, angel investors and VCs do have some sort of rules or criteria, right? If you want to have a double down, if you want to make money with your fund, you want to have some sort of evidence towards that something is going right, or at least that something is there in the market that you've based your assumptions on. So you can also do that within a corporate to improve your investment. So to take away the ones that you are sure are not going anywhere because you're not seeing any evidence, and use that money to invest in those that do have some kind of evidence towards, does the business model work or not. So that makes a lot of sense to do that in a corporate innovation. And then you can build around that, because you also want your people to be the best version of themselves in what they're doing. So if you want to improve your way of working or your funnel of ideas, you have to make sure that people are educated in the way to do that. So are they good at doing the validated learning? Are they learning? Can you see if they're doing that? What is keeping them from it? Because what you'd want to do is improve over time, not only the teams, but also how they're doing. And if your bets on the future are the right bets. So you have that, then on top of that, you have that layer of strategy, connecting it to the execution again. Like, for instance, your former guest, Noel Soberman, has talked about so well, right? Is the strategy. Are we doing well with our bets? Are we moving towards that or not? Can we see that again in the execution? Because if your bet on the future doesn't have any evidence, then you can see that none of the ideas based in that will actually turn out any evidence back towards whether or not they will succeed in the end. So then you have to revise it every half year, look at it and make sure it's happening. So for me, innovation accounting is real-time metrics on team basis, so that the teams understand what they are doing. Metrics on top of that for managing those teams to understand, as an investor or as a coach, what is happening and how you can help them, whether or not you want to invest in that, looking at it maybe every 3 months. And on top of that, the strategy layer, where the board maybe is looking at it every half year to understand if their strategy is going all right. And that then is something that tells the journey of your funnel, right? Because your funnel is your future portfolio. It's not a portfolio. Your portfolio is what is there right now, but your future portfolio is your funnel. And that whole system of innovation accounting then tells the journey of your funnel, your journey of the search towards new business models. And the accounting people, the financial people, can use that story to understand what is happening with their investment in innovation.
Yeah. A lot of times, I don't think companies have a good grip on what those metrics are and how to articulate value and importance around those metrics. I mean, everybody jumps to financials. What's it cost? What's the return? What's your guess, right? But that's only such a small part of it. And especially early on when you just don't know. I've had people tell me that too much of a focus on a business case, as an example, will stifle innovation. Do you agree with that?
Well, absolutely, yes, because it will slam it down to something, because it will always ask for a return within a year. A business case is basically saying, I want you to predict a return within a year because I have this cost on the one side, and I want you to have a return on the other side.
You're
And even
right.
if it's a
Correct.
prediction over 5 years, it's still asking for that, right? So what I see usually, if there is companies that fail to implement that second system, and they have this brilliant strategy on digitalization with business cases, and they're doing so well in that, they really want to build new business models on top of it, because that's the opportunity of doing so much digitalization, right? It's the opportunity of building brilliant new business models on top of that. But what you see is that if they fail to put that into the second system and then ask for a return right away, it will always become sort of an incremental innovation and
Yeah.
never have the opportunity of becoming that 10x disruptive thing that it could have been.
Yeah.
Just because it isn't given the timeline of finding out whether or not it could work. So for instance, if you look at Airbnb, right? The story of Airbnb, which is a very digital, non-asset kind of
Big
innovation,
one. Yeah.
right? It's a big one. But if you look at the timelines of Airbnb, for most people, it became successful overnight, right? Because that is the point where they hit the mass market and the financial story goes up like a hockey stick. But there is around 8 years before that where they were working with the early evangelist, the pioneer, so to say, looking at trends and who's doing what. And they had some sort of revenue, but it didn't hit the analysis, right? Because nobody was seeing it. It was a flat line to most people. But to us, if we looked at it, there were indicators, just different ones, fuzzy to most people because they're not financial. But there was a story there. And for me, with innovation accounting, you can tell that story. You can show people that there was evidence and that they built on that and that they made decisions based on that to be able to have that hockey stick when they finally hit mass market. And I think that is marrying the two systems, so that you have innovation accounting telling the story of that search and have control over that search somehow a little bit with data-driven decisions instead of just gut decisions, to the financial story where you can
Right.
actually see what's happening and you need to execute on that.
Yeah, what a great story, Esther. So have you found, are there certain types of companies that are more ready to accept and adopt those ideas of, hey, I want to look at something beyond just project financials, and I want to look at these new metrics, these innovation accounting metrics? Are there companies that are more, maybe industries or type of companies that are more progressive in doing that? Are you seeing any differences in there?
Well, in terms of doing that kind of innovation, there's industries that definitely feel more pain. So they're sort of urged to look towards it more, like maybe the financial or the insurance industries, where you see that bottom up, they are looking for ways to do this. But it's hard to get it through to the bigger company because they're still used to these financials, and top down it's even harder because they're controlled by the monetary systems, right? So they're
Right.
asking for financials. So bottom up they're doing really well and they want to change that, but top down it's harder for them. Whereas, for instance, there's companies that are harder to change from within and they don't do it bottom up really well yet. But if you look at it from a top down perspective, the oil industry, for instance, they do have some sort of way to look at these experiment driven validations, because in their financial accounting, there's already a way to look at it in a
Yeah,
different way.
it's included.
It's included. So for them, it's different. And I think health and medical is already also used to exploring in a different way. So they have different ways to deal with that, not only in their accounting, but also in their processes already. So for them, it's easier to sort of switch and try new ways.
You know, I'm thinking of other industries, food and beverage industry. We saw them go through this when the trend towards healthy foods happened, right? And they all said, well, we just can't look at this just on financials alone because we have no idea what the financials are going to be, right? So they had to have some other metrics. And it seems like the automotive industry must really be struggling with that now. Everything that they knew how to do is no longer valid, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They all ought to go buy your book and read it.
I think so. Yeah. Yes.
Where do you see things going, let's say, in the next year or next 5 years in this area?
Yeah, I think it's sort of we're at the beginning of a curve right now because people understand that it's needed, and there's a lot of teams that are doing innovation, disruptive innovation, even from within companies. But I think it's also a mindset change that we need to go through. People need to understand that metrics can feel fuzzy, but they're not fuzzy if you actually measure something. And to most people, it feels fuzzy because it's not financial. But you can measure other things as well, as long as you make sure that it answers your question and you use it towards something that to steering into a better way, right? So I think it's one of the reasons actually that we've built our software platform, because what we're seeing is that people find it hard to come up with metrics that work for them and find it fuzzy, and they don't know what they should implement or how. But if you give them something they can see with the basics and the metrics, and that they can then get insights by it, it's easier to transform a company, because then it's automatically sort of implemented, right? This is what you get. So what I've noticed is that I can give like 7 master classes to the board or to people, telling them that the timelines that you look at when you do disruptive investing are so much longer, and that you can control it by different things than financial accounting. It's hard if I don't give them something that new, right? I give them a blank paper and I say,
Right.
draw something. That's hard for most people. I have to give them a template. So you can't do this, but look at this. So I try to stay away from these master classes, because I think the change happens faster if you give them something new. So that helps companies implementing the new system, because what you can do is say, you can't ask for return on investment within a year, but look, you can ask this. We have
Yeah.
this. We are transparent, we're accountable, and this is what we're doing. So that's what people need to sort of learn and unlearn what they know, and that will take time. But I think we're on the beginning of that curve towards
Yeah.
understanding that and building the two systems within companies.
Yeah. Very good. I think what you're doing is you're taking guesswork out of it. Everybody guesses, well, I think we're making progress, right? And you're giving them at least something. And fuzzy or not, it's measurable. It's like you said, it's accountable, right? It's real. I think that's a great approach towards, giving something back. To anybody who's invested. If you're a large company, you've given a big budget to somebody to go build something, it is a great idea, a great way to track. Am I getting something out of the investment? How are we doing
Exactly,
on it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's not just one investment, it's a lot of little bets that
Yeah.
you did. And not all of them will make it, but at least it's little bets. And you keep the money to put on the ones that do have evidence to move forwards.
Yeah.
So it's all data driven. And then you have some control on what happens to your money.
Well, that was really great, Esther. I really appreciate that. Just a final question I would ask is there one key piece of advice you would give to let's say a larger company around this area?
I think shorten the lines, right? So if you are a CEO or CIO that really wants innovation to happen within your company, decide on whether or not that is new business model innovation, and then talk to your innovation managers directly. Don't put other layers in between, but make sure, because there's a lot of learning and unlearning to do, but make sure you have direct lines and understand each other in terms of budget, in terms of what you mean by success. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Wow, I love that answer. That's a really great answer. I would have never thought you would go there. So it's hard for me to top that one. Well, listen, Esther, I really appreciate you joining us. If people want to follow you or kind of keep track on you, how can they do that?
You can follow me on Twitter. That's hard, right? I'm Wilg on Twitter, WILG. You can look at my site. It's groundcontrol.com. That's it, basically. My
Yeah.
LinkedIn is always a good way to talk to me. I will chat back most definitely. So
Great.
look me up on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, I encourage all our listeners to do that and to check out the two books, The Corporate Startup and Innovation Accounting, and we'll have links to those in the show notes as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Paul.
Esther, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation. Things like this are always too short. I think we could talk for hours because you're a very
I'm
engaging
sure we
person.
can.
It's a lot of fun and you've got a lot of great stuff going on. Maybe you come back and join us again someday.
Oh, I would love to, Paul. Thanks for the podium.
Yeah, you bet. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us. I wish you a great week ahead and we will talk to you next time. Have a great week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us this week for Innovation Talks with Paul Heller. For additional information on today's topic, check out sopheon.com, SOPHEON.com, where you will find plenty of innovation-centric content and corporate best practices. If you'd like to discuss anything with Paul or would like to get in touch with the show, email us at talks@sopheon.com.